Oh boy, fuck it, we'll do it live. Yep. Let's make sure the audio's working. Y'all hear this music, right? Oh, hey, that's it. That's all I wrote. That was Hip Hop Triage. Unfinished song. How long does that beat go for? 5.5 minutes? I mean, it's pretty repetitive. It's a great beat. If I had like 10 people maybe to jump on that beat. Hey Lucario, thanks so much for the shout out in your commission video. No problem. Thank you so much for all the clips and all the signal boosting, as always. And apologies for pushing off the start of streaming so many times, especially to the Brigadoon fans. A lot been going on. This is a song that I wrote this very short verse specifically to do it in a posh British accent. And like I wanted to get a bunch of other people to do like the goofiest verse they can on this. I don't think it really fits on my ridiculously adequate performance album. Like it's at the same level of bars and performance, but it's just not the right atmosphere. It's a little too goofy. But I think it's really fun. It's a good song. I hope I finish it sometime. Let's listen to that little 35 seconds of it again, shall we? I mean, this could be considered a complete song, I guess. I can remember it. It's a memorable 35-second. You don't think you can hear the sound? Oh, good. Well, that means that you'll hear it for the first time then when I redo the presentation and make sure the fucking sound is working. So, if you didn't hear the sound, now you already know what the song is before you hear it. So context adds, that extra spice. Okay, here we go. Yes. You hear that, right?
It's the Mirage, here to perform the hip-hop triage. Mental massage, steer with the form of a tip-top corsage. Posh, ponderous pause? No barrage. Yours is the base of the case is moulage. Ooh la la, Moulin Rouge et moi. Keep me away from the garbage served like goulash by these ghoulish nonsense. My flow prances like a dancer of a toe. You sort of sound like a hoe. Ho, 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 ho. Now go home.
Yeah, and then the beat just keeps going forever. I don't know. I think that's kind of cute and fun. Maybe I'll finish it one day. Shitakusa Sekai, world under the trees, another humanoid planet, Trixie the Golden Witch. I wanted to open with this because look at how cool it looks. Like just the word art here. It's just a bunch of words that look cool on a page. Like I really formatted this. This is good word art. It sets the tone. Like the combination, I think, of the color, what it's describing, this like weird off-kilter way of using words, the combination of English and Japanese, like the same thing translated for some reason. It looks neat. Anyway, what the fuck is this? What is Shitakusa Sekai, world under the trees, another humanoid planet? Storvand is a planet 70 times larger than Earth, comprised almost entirely of ocean. The ultra-hot star which it orbits, Urarulna, generates the planet's red sky and rapidly evaporates its water, which its ultra-dense atmosphere redeposits in constant rainstorms. So it's a red sky overlooking just a constant storm, When the ocean receded enough to reveal the continent Erkata, which became enveloped in massive blue trees reaching up into the clouds and collecting them wholesale, the ocean finally settled enough for other life to thrive within. Whatever can survive the depths of the turbulent Vodavelic Ocean or in the rainy underbrush of the stratospheric Boomgroot continental forest has been able to evolve on Storvand. The most complex and dominant species living beneath the Boomgroot is the Iwitipu, a humanoid plant species capable of interfacing with other species for symbiotic effects. Their cultures have tended towards violence until now, as often as humanity's, and as their technology improves, so too does their ability to generate that violence. That's it. I don't know why. I don't know why or when I wrote this. No fucking idea. Absolutely no idea. This is one of those I opened up and I was like, well, that looks awesome, but what the fuck is this? What is this? This very much reeks of like maybe I'm out at like, I don't know, the grocery store and like having a thought like, what if I don't know, planet covered in water, and then just like go into my phone and type this out in like 15 minutes and then completely forget that I did that. Trixie finding out about typography. I took a typography class actually. It's one of my I'm a big fan of typography. It's very hard to accomplish. And I think that in this case it's less that the typography is special as that the word choices and the use of symbols, I guess all of it qualifies as typography, but like, because typography is a pretty wide, a pretty big, it's like the whole goddamn tree of using words for design, but anyway, yeah, this is the whole goddamn tree that soaks up the giant cloud that is constantly being evaporated by the killer sun that creates a red sky. And then down in the depths, there's evolution of these. I don't remember writing this. I don't even think I have anything written down about this one story. Let me search for this and see if I have anything written down about Potum. No, Potum, Potum. It could be on a different. I have more than one email that has active Google. God damn. I might not have ever written. I have a very vivid idea of this one story in my brain. It looks like I have not ever taken notes on it. Called Potum, or President of the United Mammals. Instead of, like how POTUS is President of the United States. But the President of the United Mammals is a hippopotamus. So the Potum also is the Potum of hippopotamus, I know it's not spelled that way, but just work with me here. This is like a comic book. It's about like a far future society where hippos have become the most evolved creatures on Earth after like basically, global warming has made it a big ocean. Humans are gone. And, like the most evolved creatures are like hippos and whales and shit. And basically hippos have built their society using like the remnants of human society. They don't really understand it, like, but they've kind of built a semblance of it anyways. I guess I haven't taken any notes about Potum anywhere. That's just something I've had kept in my brain. White Widow. I wanted to make a sequel to the Black Widow movie that nobody saw. Probably not a good idea. Okay. All right, let's take a vote, y'all, in the chat. Actually, let me first talk about why this is happening before I forget. I read this thing once. I could not track down who said this, where, or the exact quote. I couldn't find it on Google. I think it was a comedian or something. I know it was a woman. I can't remember who specifically, but she was successful enough that when she said this, I was like, okay, that's an interesting thing for a successful person to say, which was like, uh, if you want to be successful, figure out whatever people find the most annoying about you and lean in on that. And it's very clear to me that what people think is the most annoying about me is how often I start projects and don't finish them. And I feel like I have let myself be very ashamed of that because of the fact that people find it so annoying. But I don't know if it's something I can necessarily change about myself. I just think I'm not necessarily innately good at finishing stories, that I'm necessarily as interested in it as I am in starting them. There are some that like I have tasked myself to finish, but also like the guilt I feel over not having finished those ones and continuing to say that I will prevents me from wanting to start new projects because I feel like I'm just going to get asked about the unfinished ones. And like no one understands how many how many things I actually start that I just keep quiet about because I'm like, I don't want anybody to get attached to this idea, then be upset that I'm not working on another idea. But I had this conversation with Gary Always on Twitter. Now, Gary Always is the biggest Kusomega fan in the world. And certainly the biggest Libely fan in the world. And I gotta show off this badass artwork that Gary drew of me actually just the other day. Actually, maybe it'll be faster to get this through his Twitter. Yeah, there we go. Oh wait, this is the unfinished version. Where's the finished version? God damn it. Oh god, you motherfucker, you tweet so much. There's no way I'll find this. It'll be something we both are mentioned in. No, it's all of our conversations with Butthole Weeb coming up instead. Twitter, you're such a worthless platform. Whatever. Gary always drew a cool fan art of me. And you can find it somewhere. He'll find a way to get it to you. But we had a conversation earlier where he was saying, if I ever call into your Fix You stream, just know that the thesis of most of it will be finished stuff. They said the more people want me to finish stuff, the more I want to publish even more of my unfinished work. And he said, do that also. If you aren't going to finish it either way, I think most of us would want to see what's there regardless. So I want to know, y'all, how many of you feel the same way as Gary Always? Because I don't think everyone feels this way. I think some people develop an emotional attachment to something and then it will drive them insane forever to not get more of it. And I don't know what projects you're going to get. Like, as much as Gary Always loves Kusomega and is in his mind is probably thinking that must be my primary project because it's the one I've put the most effort and love into, on the surface at least. It's the one that has the most promise. It's the one that somebody keeps asking for the most, right? But there are some people whose favorite thing I've written is fucking oh my god, I can't even remember the name. The one with the Doomers. The Doom guys. I have like a mental image in my head of the fucking cover art that I never drew or commissioned anyone to draw. It's so unfinished. Hermit Society. I've released like 2 chapters of this thing once, and some people were like, I really liked that. I hope you continue it. And I'm like, I probably won't. Honestly, that's one that I like what's there. I probably won't. Especially because I saw something else more popular use the like a town has 3 days of night concept, like exactly the same way that first book was. And I was like, all right, it's burned, like the same way as like Vito's Super Killer comic has been burned by the release of the Deadpool movie. Gary always says, I don't keep bringing up Kusomega because I imagine that you care about it more than other things. Keep bringing it up because you never forget its name. It's true. I mean, it is the one, though, that, like, if there was a tree to bark up, it would be the one that actually has a website I still pay for. You know, like obviously that's the one I like the most. Amy, you haven't touched Kusomego? What? It's only like 4 hours. It's so quick to listen to. Anyway, what is this? Falling Leaves Forever? I must have published this somewhere. I think. A brush leet taut with health, edge cutting thin, eagerly relinquishes the water that pounds its flesh. Suffers not, it weathers the storm, and in sunlight again flourishes. Only left too long in winter dark does it wither, wilt, and fall. Where did I put these? Maybe on Twitter? I might have screen capped these and put them on. Well, this one's kind of long for that. I don't know. Black Hole Sun. I looked after a child for 8 years, and one day he imploded. His black hole drew in the atmosphere around him, and I saw distortions in space, even the ground beneath his feet shifting upward in the pull of his gravity. Eventually, he might swallow the world. I would like to make myself emotionally ready before I am destroyed by the death of my son. I like that one. How long is Kusomega in words? I think it's the first book is only like 12,000 or something like that. It's like an hour and 15 minutes of reading. And then the second book's 2.5 hours or something. So it's like 30. I think the second book's 35K. And then the third book has the preview section of the third book. It might as well be considered the third book at this point. Is as long as the first one. No, actually, that might not be a bad idea. What if I just considered that the third book and then just made the next one the fourth one, and that would be the last one? That would probably make more sense. Rebranding. Because enough happens in that one, obviously. Anyway, did I see your message, Lucario? I saw your original one about thanking me, and I did respond to it. So you can go rewind for that, I guess. Yeah. Unless you meant something else, I have no idea. Never been a big fan of works that are completed by writers other than the original author. You can always taste them trying to imitate the OG style, but you can tell it's not the real thing. That's true. I mean, and also like with Kusomega, I guess the biggest difference, like the reason that Kusomega and the one I've brought up a few times, Good People, which I'm not going to read on here because I actually don't want to spoil it before it's done because it's too good. I know how they're supposed to end. That's the biggest difference between them and most of the other unfinished projects. And the reason I think I can finish them is that I knew the ending already. And I know most of what's supposed to happen along the way. It's just like a couple of segments that are hard for me to write because they're too emotionally raw. Like I don't want to accidentally write something I don't want to write it the wrong way and then regret it later. You know, I want to be at the exactly right emotional distance to write those segments. Anyway, water for work. Martin Margello was born dead into the desert village of Devarius. His first charge was incurred when the town doctor took him from his mother's womb. His second charge would come from being entered into the 7-year water accessibility program, which provided free water to Martin's family for 7 years while indebting his parents to feed and clothe him throughout. To pay these debts, Martin was sent upon his 7th birthday to attend work and warrior training with Devarius Control League for 7 years. Martin's credit record grew complex during his training. He was first admitted to into the 7-year functional living program, which allowing him to share a dormitory with other boys featuring basic living necessities, access to public baths, 2 meals, and 3 quarts of drinking water daily. In exchange for 7 hours, 6 days a week, he alternated daily between work and warrior training, often shadowing and assisting adults. The DCL provided no shortage of exchange opportunities for trainees. A 4th cup of water for cleaning a communal area or an extra meal in exchange for using heavier weights during training are examples of common trades made by Martin. Martin was given a choice between two programs to continue with after graduating work and warrior training. The 10-year Work, Wife, and Water program assigned jobs where needed by the state based on aptitude displayed during training, in exchange for housing, access to public baths, drinking water, 2 meals a day, and the opportunity to wed and have children with another member of the program. Those who couldn't choose a partner in 3 years had another leftover assigned to them. At the end of 10 years, members of this program had the opportunity to enter the Advanced Jobs program, renew their vows, and/or renew their 10-year work contract. The 10-year Warrior for Water program, on the other hand, which Martin chose, provided many of the same benefits as the other program, except that instead of taking a wife, Martin was given the opportunity after each return from a successful war campaign to impregnate one of the Davarian stateswomen, a group of women from the Mothers for Davaria program who signed up to conceive children with soldiers in exchange for working to help raise all of the fatherless children collected in the state nursery. Martin sired 3 children across 2 years and was rewarded highly for his efforts in battle, as they led to victory in 3 campaigns, during the third of which he was killed. He died debt-free. I actually really like that one. I totally forgot about ever having written that. A cyberpunk approach to feudalism. We're describing a feudalistic system or something. Anyway, Cool Mood Smoke. Her darker pink nail polish shouldn't draw my attention in this darkness, but the sparkle catches moonlight in my eyes, just a glint along the way to her lips with the cigarette. I watch the curve of her porcelain jaw peeking through gaps in cherry-colored hair, flick, flick, now lit inside those hazel eyes. Cool mood, she says, low and surly, staring far beyond me over the hardly lit mountainside behind my house. Smoke? She then asks after a pause. Sure. I take a cigarette and let her light it for me, even though I don't smoke, and I watch the shadow of a bird descend to obscurity in the valley. It's a cool mood. There you go. That's 4 stories about falling leaves, I guess. I like that. That was very poetic. That actually is complete. I would consider this a complete work. Like, it took me a moment to understand exactly how they're all connected, but I feel like this is almost like one poem. I just don't know how you would publish this in any format other than I just did. So there you go. I don't remember this at all. Kage no Shoujo, Eye of God by Beatrice Derasine. Okay. Prelude. Melodically and patiently as always, with that soft voice, she begins. Sometimes I think I'm hearing a song for a while, but then it just turns out to be a totally different sound coming from somewhere else. Does that ever happen to you? He sits beside her on the floor of a garage atop a big square rug, surrounded by 4 dogs, 3 near asleep, rolled up in circles on each side, and a 1-year-old German shepherd's head on her legs. He pauses the episode of anime he's been holding up his phone to play for her with one hand, while smoking a cigarette with the other. What do you mean? He asks, turning to her a bit, careful not to blow smoke in her face. Just now for a while, I thought there was this really intense techno music playing in the show. But then the scene changed and the music was still going, and I realized it wasn't in the show. I was just hearing the rattling noise from the heater over there behind us. I guess because I had thought the sound was coming from the show, I tricked myself into thinking it sounded like music. Probably because you're high, he responds jokingly before taking a smoke. I'm not high. Besides, I hear that kind of stuff all the time whenever it's really quiet, especially if I'm in bed and I hear something far away and I can't tell what it is. Does that happen to you when you're high? As she speaks, the dog keeps trying to lick her wrist, but she pulls her hand away as soon as she feels the wetness. No, I was just being funny, he says. That's probably how all musicians are, honey. That's why some people can make music. You're a musician too. I guess so, she trails off. You guess. Don't you have like 30 albums from the last decade or something? Yeah, sure, but none of the stuff I've actually made is as good as the stuff that I come up with inside my head, and nobody likes it. Can I really call it music if only I can hear it and it never really solidifies? Since when is music a solid? She laughs. You know what I mean. I don't know. To the question of whether or not you are a musician, it's not that important whether you have music to show for other people or you don't. I don't think you have to prove what you believe about yourself to anyone. Let them think of you what they will, because they're never really going to understand you completely anyways. You don't think you understand me completely? She turns to him, asking. Not even close. Do you feel that way about me? He faces her back. Not really. I don't think I ever get the response I'm expecting from you, so I end up forgetting a lot of what I anticipated having to say. Good. It means we'll be able to keep talking over a much longer period of time. For now, though, back to the show. He presses play again, and they continue watching anime. Well, that just sounds like a lightly fictionalized version of a conversation me and Bird probably really had. But then we are jumping directly from that into what clearly seems to be fiction. I must have written this when we were living with my Uncle Johnny in like late 2021, early 2022. But I seriously don't remember any of this. Like, I remember having written that now that I read it, like, vaguely, but I don't remember actually doing it. Chapter 1, Eye of God. Viewers of all denomination, the Hypermyth Foundation is proud to bring you the final round of this year's Vibe Controller Championship. A bunch of digitally affected Vibey graphic animations play out on screen, forming the HMF and VCC logos out of swirling colors before they dissipate in a screen transition to the live camera footage of two tall guys in VR headsets with corresponding glove controllers standing on stage in front of a live audience on one side and a huge array of laser lights and LED monitors behind them. So this is like the start of the Pokemon game, but with guys in VR goggles. If you have access to the VR equipment and a strong internet connection, you can stream the Vibe session straight from our servers by searching vcc.nft. Only those viewers who experience this session with full immersive sound, video, and interactivity, and who sign up with the $1 weekly subscription service with a once-monthly $1 rebate in VCC's open trade currency, can vote towards which of these esteemed finalist Vibe controllers takes home the grand prize of $20 million in VCC tokens. Okay, so this is obviously during the 6 months when NFTs were relevant. The TV announcer is practically shouting over pulsating bass noise and interloping arrays of arpeggiated keyboard samples broadcasting live beneath his voice. The hand gestures and head movements of the VC seem to correspond with the timing of the colored lights flashing up towers behind them. The monitors above continually cut between different viewers' independently streamed footage of experiencing the event from their own perspective, although limited to the 2 dimensions of the digital display instead of the 3D visuals with motion control through which those players were experiencing the same event. Remember, you can switch between each contestant's vibe room at any moment by snapping your fingers on your left or right hands, but the more time you spend in one room versus the other will determine how the system calculates your vote. This is purely a battle for vibe retention between these 2 contestants. For the sake of the broadcast, we will only be playing the feed of the audio and video of one contestant at a time, going back and forth in 15-second chunks. I'm going to stop talking over it now. Let's put 3 minutes on the clock and see who can keep the vibe. Damn, did I miss their names? Who made it to the final? I can't tell them apart under the headsets, goddammit. Lelo Shenpa continues hurriedly trading places between the living room and kitchen, catching glimpses of the loudly turned-up broadcast on her television in between finishing with making dinner. She tops a fettuccine alfredo with cut-up chicken breast and hurries her way into the living room, plops down on a cheap old sofa, and starts swirling noodles up with her fork while judging the on-screen actions of the VCs. This guy's room does seem pretty fun. Not having bothered to watch any of the previous episodes of this series, Lelo had only resolved to tune in to the final battle just because there would almost certainly be some legitimate talent at the top of the competition to potentially take influence from. Even if these very mainstream appealing vibe aesthetics weren't really to her taste, and she hated the corporate sponsors of these events and the tacky way that they presented themselves, she nonetheless had a certain respect for anyone that was able to actually attract an audience and make any kind of living off of being a vibe controller. To tell the truth, when this show had first begun when she was 14 years old, Lelo had considered attending one of its infamous televised auditions, newly having started experimenting with vibe controlling in rooms that she set up for her friends from school. When she saw the actual thing play out, though, she was stunned by how much the level of talent on display exceeded her own, and also by how unappealing the styles that were the most successful on the show were to her, regardless of the VC's craft. At this point, 5 years later, Lella was more astonished that anyone would be satisfied with the lifestyle of being a professional VC, a concept she now considers laughable. It isn't that she didn't see the artistry and the performance of vibe controlling. On the contrary, she had come to appreciate that aspect more than ever in her continued deep dive into the craft over her teenaged years. Managing a vibe room can be as complex as creating your own completely unique framework for a 3D environment and control scheme, and customizing every sound and image and possibility controllable by the VC and the player, to the point that the possibilities are practically endless for what a vibe session can amount to. It can also be as simple as downloading a game like Vibe Controller Championship Home VR and using their built-in features to customize a space, sound palette, and control styles for you to host your own public or private rooms exclusive to other players, or even play a campaign mode that imitates the performances televised during the previous season of the show. Lella was already past the depth of a game like that by the time it was released when she was 15. She had already pirated and started learning her way around the much more complicated home software that would allow her to plug pretty much anything she wanted into creating a vibe experience. She got involved in online communities dedicated to sharing Vibe Room invitations and discussing the craft of being a VC, as well as in local communities of experimental VC artists, either of which was doing whatever the hell they wanted for an audience of just people interested in seeing how far the concept of a vibe session could be pushed for their own amusement. Nevertheless, the difference between the experience of experimental vibe session and that of a mainstream copyright protectable vibe session just couldn't be compared. Similarly to DJs or internet video creators, VC artists had been using the medium primarily as a means to resample and remix existing art created within corporate infrastructures and restructure it into a new expression in a more broadly affordable way. Provided you can get a hold of cheap VR equipment made for overseas game consoles and jailbreak them through freely accessible mods findable online, and then pirate all the necessary software to find time to amass a substantial media library, all of which had been easy for Lello to figure out in high school, you could make some pretty interesting vibe sessions. Like plenty of music. I think I was trying to imagine if JPEG Mafia was a girl doing VR, but by way of the living situation I was currently in. I don't know. Uh, like plenty of musicians and filmmakers, plenty of artists with access to the means to create every part of their work from scratch also created timeless vibe sessions and defined much of the world's understanding of the breadth of what could be done with the technology, though mostly they ended up being novelties commissioned from independent studios by marketing labels promoting songs and movies. That is where most of the money that went into vibe controlling, with some VCs that grew to popular acclaim for doing big shows in their local scene, ascending briefly to being the advertising face of some video game, or a semi-finalist from VCC doing commercials for Sony's VR TV. Yeah, obviously is a big metaphor for the entire media industry as it stands. Not even a metaphor, it's just a new piece of technology that all of the same things are happening with. Now that Lello is 19 years old, she has already seen the decline in publication and public discourse over even the most famous and artistically forward-thinking vibe controllers of her mid-teens, and the lack of new blood in the scene as a result of the mounting hype for immersion streaming, the setup for which she isn't even close to being able to afford. Money was on the way out of vibe controlling on the whole, and even the VCC wasn't likely to continue for more than another season in Lello's opinion, but at the very least, the championship round of the biggest competition of amateur VC in existence might be a decent accompaniment to eating dinner alone. Impressed as she was with the very technical performance of the VCs on television, as she slurps up an Alfredo noodle like she's eating ramen, pushes her oversized glasses back up her nose, and lifts her light brown ponytail over the back seat so she can lay back farther, she lapses once more into her recent state of mind with regard to vibe controlling. It's probably about time for me to quit. Truthfully, it had nothing to do with how she felt about her own talent as a VC or about its status as an artful hobby over any kind of meaningful career opportunity. It was just that her inspiration had finally dried up, and nothing that she'd seen in nearly a year had given her any ideas about how to respark it. Lello's main drive as a VC artist had always been to try and impart onto others something akin to the experiences she's had 7 times in her life until now of seeing through the eye of God. It springs up on her out of nowhere with no clear rhyme or reason. It only seems to last a split second, judging by the sameness of her environment before and after experiencing it. But from Lelo's perspective, an indeterminately massive number of images are suddenly blasted through her senses as though she were experiencing them in person. Like waking from a long night of dreams, only tiny traces of it all flit through her mind afterward, before the crushing panic of a suddenly changed perspective overtakes her body. Every so often, just like she would one of her own experiences, she remembers an image that she knows she doesn't remember having seen before, and assumes that she learned from seeing through what she named the Eye of God. Nobody she explained this experience to could relate to it enough to even start figuring out what might be going on, and usually encouraged her not to think about it too much, since she was capable of living her life just fine without trying to understand it. When she first attempted to impart these experiences through art as a child, her work was seen by others as disturbing and haunting. Some people considered this to be a positive thing, though, and encouraged her to look into horror art and try to hone her style into something more consumable. Ultimately, she did learn how to make horror geeks and fans of experimental art enjoy her work as a vibe controller in her teens, but she was never sure if she really got across the experiences unique to her. Many of the people she had met had their own strange and often far more troubling life circumstances, but no one she'd met had dealt with anything quite like the condition that she still couldn't identify when it last struck her at age 16. That was the year that she'd been the most inspired and spent the most time binge-consuming all kinds of media inside and outside of the culture, trying to find as many resonant images and cram as many new memories into the heads of her audiences as possible at the same pace that they had entered hers, but the feeling was never quite the same. A memory constructed through the lens of art, no matter how closely it resembles an experience, cannot make it feel the same way as having had that experience. And the winner of this year's Vibe Controller Championship is... Just as Lelo finishes the last bite of her chicken Alfredo and sets the plate down on the coffee table in front of her, the Eye of God opens to her for the first time in 3 years. Images come so fast and vividly, it's hard to know how many Lelo has seen by the time she completes the thought inside her head. It's happening again. The images almost seem to slow down as she thinks. Only 5 distinct visions pass by in the time it takes her to think those 3 words, and yet each of those is more than just an image. It is a moment of lived-in experience that carries some level of innate understanding for the reason it is happening, and an amount of time transpired within whose speed in comparison to the experience of hearing her own thought as 3 distinct words in her head can't be quantified. Too much continues to happen for her to have another coherent thought for what to her seems like a long while. Some of these are familiar. This thought is the next thing to strike her as she comes closer to recognizing some kind of pattern in the endless static inhabiting her memories. Perhaps it is no more than the inevitability of coming upon similar scenes again in the Rolodex of possible experiences in human history, but she was sure by now that many of the memories she'd been imbued with had similar characteristics which she couldn't call back to mind while still being subject to so many new experiences at the same time, and so only managed that 5-word thought across the time of witnessing 12 scenes from completely different places. Even as she fails to find the words to denote their noteworthiness, she takes notice every so often of an image that sparks familiarity to a memory she's seen before. The more she continues this practice, the more prolonged the moments she spends in familiar memories seem to last, just enough for her to generically recognize where she might possibly be right before the image changes again. Plane, building, bed, valley, just long enough to see something familiar. As these longer experiences pile up, the overall experience of God's Eye is slowed, and more details of the scenes come into Lelo's mind. She also begins to hear something, or perhaps she is only able to parse what she has been hearing as it is slowed down by her increasing ability to process the imagery. It almost sounds like a song, like a distant jungle rhythm and a glitchy wall of noise with some semblance of melody playing in the distant back of her mind. Trying to fixate on the sound gives her less time to process the images, leading them to speed up again and the sound to dissipate into high frequency. And so with determination, she turns her attention back to the images, even more empowered by the underlying sensation of personal will compelling her to compete with the contact from God. Beach, crowd, sex, woods, fire, concert, desktop, video, mountains, fishing boat. As she comes to understand the scenes better, the music becomes audible again, but she tries not to focus on it and to just keep placing herself inside of the memories for as long as she possibly can. Classroom, campsite, cooking, cul-de-sac. The more the noise slows down, the less it sounds like music and more like a chaotic wall of disparate sounds playing fast enough to sound like one unified vibration when paying attention to it, but almost like a song when it's in the background of her mind. I recognize this place. All of a sudden, Lella was halted in a moment, completing a thought and thoroughly drinking in the scenery of a place she's been before, Bryce Canyon, a national park in Utah. She'd been mystified when she visited in the summer when she was 16, and she recognizes the snow-covered hoodoos from images on brochures at the gift shop. God, just let me die here. Lello hears another voice besides her own inside her thoughts. Is that the voice of the person who had this memory? The visions speed up nigh incomprehensibly again until Lello finds another strongly recognizable image to cling onto. Walmart, outdoor section. Lord, I can't deal with this anymore. Please take me soon. The voice of an old woman seems as present as Lello's own thoughts. Do they all want to die? As the visions speed up again, Lello instead focuses on trying to find a pattern in the sounds, searching for the word God in the wall of noise at the back of her mind. Entering a vision of a ceiling dimly lit by outdoor streetlights peeking through the blinds of a teenager's bedroom, she parses a voice again. God, just let me die. Why do you all want to die? That's what I want to know. Lello is overcome with the sensation that she is now alive within this vision, actually lying in this unfamiliar bed, paranoid with insomnia, watching the ceiling full of anxiety and a moment that keeps feeling longer and longer until she could swear that time had stopped. She felt something like a presence behind her, this looming pressure like a gigantic eyeball had opened up directly behind her and consumed her in its sight. Is this the eye of God? An old God whose time has come. Do these memories belong to you? These are prayers. I have shown you millions of prayers for death. Why? Why did you want me to see this? I am supposed to be dead. Another God should have taken my place by now, evolved to better affect the balance of life on your planet. I am kept alive in captivity under the guise of fanaticism by those who benefit from the imbalance of the world as it is. These are the prayers of the people I cannot help with my powers, except in what can be brought about in my death. What could I possibly do to help you die? If you wish to be understood, I can make everyone understand you to such familiarity that they cannot distinguish you from their own shadow. You will be audible at your discretion, but visible to no one. That sounds terrifying. And what the hell am I supposed to do with that curse? Locate and destroy my physical form where it is held captive, and like so many others, balance will be returned to your existence. Others have heard my voice and will be drawn together. When you are all together, the answer will become clear. Are you asking me to abandon my current life entirely and fight my way through a powerful cult to assassinate a suicidal god with the help of a small crew of cursed people with the necessary powers to bring about a new age? Why was I chosen to be a part of this? Because you tried to listen. Here, listen more. Lello is too fraught with conflicting emotions, struggling to grasp her impending situation, to process the endless memories any longer. They continue beaming into her head for what feels like ages until she is suddenly on the couch again, trembling in a still moment, grasping barely to the standout bits and pieces of what happened in front of an empty plate. That's it for this year's Vibe Controller competition, brought to you by the Hypermyth Foundation. See you again next year. Wow, I really like this. I totally don't remember this at all. Do not remember this at all. And I really like it. What the fuck? All right, I guess chapter 2 I started. Anzu Atherin had started dressing up as a 16th century knight during her 3rd year of high school, though she didn't become known for it to friends and family and to certain communities at large until she was in her 2nd year of college. That's a perfect paragraph. That might be the best paragraph I've ever written. What the fuck? I love that. That's not even a paragraph. That's one sentence. That might be the best single sentence I've ever written. Anzu Atherin had started dressing up as a 16th century knight during her 3rd year of high school, though she didn't become known for it to friends and family and to certain communities at large until she was in her 2nd year of college. I love that sentence. It just started as a hobby and something I was interested in, she explained matter-of-factly to an interviewer for some gaming publication's livestream when they approached her representing a convention booth for a new game about Valkyries while dressed as the main character. I like stories about knights in video games where you play as knights, and I wanted to see how it would feel to walk around like that in everyday society. So I started putting together costumes to wear to conventions, and I quickly got swept up in that whole community. I became known for my custom equipment and for, I don't know, when I have the helmet off, being the silver-haired girl in the knight costume, I guess. I just wore different night costumes around until people started sponsoring me to do it for events like this one, where they actually have me physically representing the main character, Hildur. Despite her relatively short stature, Anzu's straightforward attitude and the piercing gaze of her blue eyes beside the silver hair she wore in a side braid really made her look like a knight character out of an anime-styled video game. And so it was no wonder she'd quickly become popular within the cosplay scene. Her stoic brand of charisma caused almost everyone she met to fall in love with her, while barely feeling fit to speak with her. What the fuck? I just introduced this awesome character that I didn't do anything. What the hell? I have no idea where I was going with this. None. I don't remember writing this. That took like 20 minutes, right? There's a few things I'm not going to be able to read tonight because they're fucking too long that I have open here. Gary always with $5 says, super chatted for $2 in the last stream. That plus this are down payment for MD Ep 8, Liberty Forever, MD Murder Drones. Okay. Noted down payment. It's on layaway, I guess. We're doing a video layaway system or something. No, layaway means you get it first and then you pay for it later, right? Or is it just like taking a while to buy something? I'm going to read some of the chat that I was ignoring while I was reading all that stuff. Amy talks to Annie, do you think this is because you're a very seasonal person? Me, for example, I can't just work on the same thing until it's finished. I have to work on it in blocks, breaking it down into manageable chunks, and those chunks are generally mixed with chunks from other projects. No, it's more like I get really interested in something for a short period of time, and that interest can carry me through an entire thing. And as soon as it's gone, there is like a 90% shot I'm never going to be interested in that thing again, you know, like, and like, I feel differently about things that are alive, like people or animals, things that like will like that are always going to be around and always have an effect on reality. I think it's like worth pursuing, continuing to bother with people. But when it comes to like projects or concepts or like anything that's like on the conceptual level, if it's not working, you got to get rid of it. That's my mentality. Is like, if this isn't making me happy, if this is becoming stressful, if this is like stopping me from doing the next thing, I got to get rid of it. And it's tough because I feel that way quickly, particularly because of money. Like, it's always at the core for me, it's always like the thing that I'm the most passionate about is not going to start making money unless I can make other people as passionate about it as I am. And I can't. Like, I've never had success with that. Like, the videos that I've made that are the most successful, I was passionate about making them, but I was passionate because I thought it was such a good idea, you know? Like, it was stuff that I was like the Astros War sucks, right? Like, I was passionate to do that video series because it was, if it wasn't for the existence of Chivalry of a Failed Knight and those two shows being practically the exact same thing, and the idea of like, well, this is a 1 and this is a 3, and I'm going to use these two, bounce them off each other to express that, none of that would have ever happened. You know, like, that was the spark. That was the like, oh, this is a unique situation where like anime has actually gotten this fucking redundant that there's two of the same show airing at the same time, you know? But like, that's like historical in and of itself. And it's like an understated kind of historical. It's not something obvious that anybody would care about, but it struck me and I took advantage of that. But like, you know, every once in a while, something like that falls into my lap. And sometimes I don't do a good job taking advantage of it. Like, I was just way too late to board like One Punch Man or Hunter x Hunter, for instance. Like, those were things where they were a really big deal and I liked them. I had a pretty successful Hunter x Hunter video right after I finished the show. I should have kept coming back to it. Like, I should have made like 100 Hunter x Hunter videos because I liked the show and it was popular and I could have found 100 things to say about it. But my mentality was like, I have to talk about every anime. I have to talk about every single thing that no one's talking about yet, because I didn't know we would emerge into a future where most anime does get talked about. Where like now, actually, yeah, you probably can find somebody who's talked about that fucking show, and I don't have to do it anymore. So like, I'm glad to be in that reality, but I wish I had known, that I could have doubled down on stuff like Hunter x Hunter, or just the rare times that there were shows that I really cared about and everybody else did. I had like 4 Kill la Kill videos that were all hits, so it's like if a show is popular and I like it, that was something I should have taken advantage of more. I had really successful Ghibli videos. I should have made more of those, Anyway, I really like this Kage no Shoujo Eye of God. That was all me responding to what Amy said in chat, I guess. I'm going to actually look through more of the chat and see what else y'all talked about. Gary has a base take, release everything. Indeed. I mean, I would have literally, if I hadn't decided to do this, I would have never remembered that this existed. Maybe one day while going through my shit, I'd be like, what the fuck is Kage no Shoujo? Let me read through this real quick. But like, I seriously don't remember this. I'm sure I wrote it at Johnny's house just because the scene I'm describing in the prelude sounds like I'm in Uncle Johnny's garage with the 4 dogs. So that's the only reason I'm thinking, well, I had to have been inspired then. But yeah, that was a cool story. All right, let's read another one. Internet Tenchi, I was not going to use the Ryukishi potato sprites because particularly for Umineko, I can't. Their faces are too tiny. Like I like his designs for Higurashi. I don't know why he made the faces get so tiny for Umineko, but I really hate it. Waypoint Witch. I'm going to save this for a second. This is about the movie Belle. The Mamoru Hosoda movie Belle? I was like really offended with that movie. I think I did make a video about it, right? Did I ever end up actually talking about Belle? Let's see if it's on my oh shit, this isn't the Odyssey channel. Let's go to Linktree. I think it would be because I don't trust my YouTube to have all of my content, is why I'm going to Odyssey to look, but I feel like I made a video about Belle called like Belle is boring or something. When would this have been? When did that movie come out? I can't even remember. I remember not liking it. Maybe I did a rant about it. It looks like I was going to try to write a fix of the movie. Let's read through what's here. Hosoda Mamoru's Belle is one of the most bizarre animated films of recent years and is, in my opinion, hideously broken, but I also think I can fix it. Just like Belle sees the bruised back of the beast and thinks, I need to help that boy, I look at the screenplay for this film and I can't help thinking, why didn't anyone step in to help you, Hosoda? When will the cycle of abuse end? I've grown up with Hosoda Mamoru's filmography, as I suspect many of you have, whether you fully realize it or not. Hosoda's episode direction work on Digimon and creation of the original short film that launched the anime project, which I talked about extensively in my Anime Alphabet video on Digimon Adventure, was definitional in establishing that show's undercurrent themes about growing up with abusive or otherwise troubling parental relationships and escaping into the internet and video games to face another, even more broken and darker world where your influence has a greater impact. Hosoda-san will revisit many of the same themes and much of the same iconography in one of my personal all-time favorite films, Summer Wars from 2009, and also burst open the animated young adult contemporary sci-fi film genre in 2006 with The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, which I think made a clear through line to the existence of stuff like Your Name in 2016. He also directed what I consider easily the best One Piece movie, The Sixth One, and then hit big mainstream success with Wolf Children in 2012. While I may not personally regard this early stretch of work as highly as, say, the comparable stretches of Miyazaki Hayao or Kon Satoshi careers, I do find it to be absolutely mentionable in the conversation with those stretches of films, and Hosoda was quickly considered among the great auteurs of animated film within the culture. Up through Wolf Children, most of Hosoda's films had co-writers helping to give them structure, and I really want to know where the hell they went. I understand that Miyazaki-sama writes his own films and remarkably often doesn't even begin the screenplay until deep into the design process when animation has already begun, but it's also been argued that the screenplay is often the weakest aspect of his films and that it's only his abject mastery of visual craft which carries the films in spite of that. I can name many writer-directors whose imaginative worlds perhaps would have been difficult for others to realize, but nonetheless suffer under their director's lack of experience in specifically structuring screenplay. I've complained about Shinkai Makoto's meandering monologues and weird manic structure, and even my favorite director, Ano Hideaki-san, struggles when he tries to write alone, but Hosoda-san truly takes the cake for just slapping his raw stream of consciousness onto film and calling it a day. The Boy and the Beast was pretty unhinged, but at least in a way where it kind of seemed like it might be the point. Mirai of the Future got really weird, but it also had a lot of artsy undercurrents and some really emotional imagery that personally got to me pretty hard. But his latest film, The Dragon and the Freckled Princess, or Belle as it's been branded in English, is kind of an ordeal. I really struggled even parsing, much less giving a damn about the story the first time I watched the movie. Around 35 minutes in, when the Beast is finally introduced, I felt the weight of all the different plot threads barely introduced and left hanging finally crush down on me, and I checked out of the experience in a way that only compounded as the film went. By like halfway through this 2-hour nightmare, I barely knew what was going on anymore, and by the end, I was just totally baffled by how much of an abject clusterfuck that whole experience had been. The next day, I decided to watch the movie again at half speed and see if I could get a better grasp on it. I remember this. I really watched it at half speed. I still found it such a bizarre and exhausting experience that I regularly had to scroll back and watch parts again to make sure I understood everything that the characters were saying and follow the logical threads of the film. All told, by the end of having written this video, I will probably have spent like 8 total hours watching Belle and only coming away with the very same conclusion that it's a 4 out of 10 disaster piece out of a film. But at least I understood what the fuck it was trying to do enough that I felt like I could imagine a salvageable take on the material that everyone else would be able to enjoy as much as the people who did connect with this film as it is and enjoyed it with all of its bruises. Broadly, Belle is a movie about the way people react to suffering and the bonds that can be forged by understanding one another's suffering, even across great distances, through the medium of internet music. I can say with confidence that you shouldn't be able to write a film more relatable and understandable to me. I spend a lot of my time with abuse victims. I am an internet micro-celebrity and musician who raps mostly about pain and beauty, and I am one of the world's most famously obsessive anime fans. As I mentioned earlier, Summer Wars is one of my all-time favorite films, and I even liked Mirai of the Future more than the average audience member going by its Mal score, so I absolutely expected myself to be a Belle apologist. And in a way, maybe I am making a video that tries to justify the concept of the film and even certain aspects of its execution, but I feel more like a therapist sitting down with the film to try and help it straighten its life out. Now, I don't think it's my place to try and psychoanalyze Mamoru Hosoda-san by way of his films or to speculate about his upbringing, but certain things start to seem a little obvious when you fixate on them so specifically. Every single thing I said about Taichi and Hikari in my video on Digimon Adventure, about the implications of abuse from their father, emotional absence of their mother, dissociative tendencies and expressions on the part of the younger sibling, and a hot-headed reflection of the father's anger on the part of the older one, are all somehow even more true about the siblings suffering under their father's abuse in this film, which becomes the crux of the narrative in its third act. I don't know which sibling is the one Hosoda was more like as a kid, but considering that the youngest kids in Digimon were given the Angelmon and Angelwoman engines of self-sacrifice, and in this film the younger sibling's biorhythmically generated internet avatar is also a fragile little angel creature, I would place my bets on his having had a younger sibling whose preciousness he felt the need to protect at all costs growing up. Speaking as an eldest of 3, I know exactly how bizarrely angelic the happiness of a baby sibling can seem. I don't hate Belle. I kind of love it, but in a way that I love a cousin that's addicted to heroin. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm probably not really going to want to talk to them about anything other than how we can get them off of the heroin. I just want it to be so much better than it is because I know that all of the potential is there for greatness, and I don't understand how things got so fucked up. If you like this movie, I promise I get it, and I'm not throwing any shade. This movie feels like a shotgun blast of ideas. So many little pellets come at you that it's likely going to hit you somewhere, even if there's like 70 other pellets that just totally whiff by and wreck all the shit around you. It has a shit ton of ideas, and a lot of them are absurdly complete crystals of thought that just blast by in 10 seconds in between 5-minute musical numbers where Belle is just singing and nothing the fuck else is going on. Damn, I wish I had finished this. It is kind of fucking hilarious. I don't remember Belle at all at this point. I was, in fact, concerned trolling Belle. It was pretty funny. All right. Ooh, actually, this one I really like. I really like where I was going with this concept. This is reborn as a cabin in the woods outside another world's dungeon, or Isa Cabin. I would be interested to continue this, maybe, if I can figure out where to go with it. Chapter 1, Death, Rebirth, and Death. This is a surreal one-shot isekai horror light novel from Yig Studios' Trixie the Golden Witch Stork, reborn as a cabin in the woods outside another world's dungeon. Chapter 1, Death, Rebirth, and Death. The floorboards in my house were thin, and so I could always hear everything that everyone was talking about in every room just by keeping quiet. It's like we have a ghost in the house, my mom would say sometimes when she heard the subtle signals of my movement in the bedroom above. I was always very careful not to waste any motion or creak any boards unnecessarily, inching my way as I'd roll from laying on my one side to laying on the other. I always stayed beneath the covers in bed, tapping away at my smartphone and carefully rubbing myself to animated pornography when I knew my parents were asleep. After several years of leaving meals at my door and never seeing my face, my parents finally stopped talking about me, and in the absence of being notified of myself, I gradually forgot that I existed. Before I realized that my parents were spending more time out and that I wasn't remembering to eat, I wasted away and died. This is my attempt at a Mushoku Tensei, if you can't tell. When did I get in the shower? I can't remember the last time I showered. Even though I feel water rapidly rushing over my head, it doesn't seem to collect in my hair. Instead, it glides off, as if my head were sloped on the sides. It's a weird feeling. Only the top of my head is soaking wet, while the rest of my body is largely untouched by the downpour. Not sure how I'm going to get clean this way. I think about angling my body towards the water, but it doesn't budge. Actually, I don't seem to have any feeling in my extremities. Wherever I am must be very dark because I can't see anything. The sensation of countless droplets pounding on my head is drowning out any other sound or feeling. Weirdly, though, I feel big. Like the amount of water falling on my head should only be possible if the surface area of my head were considerably more massive than I had previously thought. Maybe this is sleep paralysis? I start to think that maybe I'm actually not in the shower, but just feeling a tingling in my brain thanks to some kind of sleep disorder. And then I feel a hand on my knob. What's this now? I am opened up. Some little valve on my body seems to be unlocked, opened up, and passed through by a smaller object, which I then feel moving into an apparently hollow section of my body, followed quickly by another heavier object, footstep by footstep like a couple of living creatures in stride. From within myself, I hear a voice that is not my own call out, reverberating off the walls of my mostly hollow interior.
"This place is perfect. Is anyone else here?"
asks a chipper feminine voice. I think about responding, but I'm not sure where even I actually am relative to the sounds which seem to be coming from inside my own body. Instead, I try to focus on understanding what's happening. Seems empty. We should sleep here till the rain lets up, and then hit the dungeon by morning. Entrance should be just about an hour's hike north. This deeper, smoother voice would seem to belong to an older man. I can feel each of their weights shifting as they unload whatever they're carrying onto the surfaces of my interior, and then search around, investigating my amenities and deciding where to rest. There's something all too familiar about the pace and cadence of their movement, of a taller man and a shorter woman settling in after a day's work to rest at home. Home? Am I a house? I know I must be having sleep paralysis at this point, but the realization feels true. The only way I could be sensing the way I do right now is if by perceiving myself not as a human, but as some kind of structure. Moreover, while I may be a house, I don't seem to be anyone's home, at least not the residence of these adventurers. Given their talk of being near to a dungeon, I figured that I might be an abandoned cabin set up to accommodate dungeon adventurers in some kind of roguelike dungeon crawling RPG, like the type I'd gotten on and off addicted to on the Nintendo Switch that I'd keep next to my cell phone in my bed back home. Home. I guess I literally am home now. After all, this isn't so different from what I was doing. Before I can trail off into the recursive memories of parental conversations which had kept me mentally trapped in my room for so long, the adventurers continue talking.
This must be the light I saw from down the hill,
The girl announces, having moved up the stairs to a room on my second floor to investigate something warm hanging near one of my windows. You bugs are always chasing after lanterns, aren't you? The man responds in kind of a mocking tone as he takes a crossed-arm stance in the doorway of the same room. From where the girl stands, I feel a vibration in the air and a brief buzzing noise, like the jitter of a huge pair of dragonfly wings cringing in reaction to the insult.
You know, that's not the first thing you've said today that I could take as prejudiced against sectoids. You got some kind of problem with jitter folk?
The girl asks. I'm starting to get the impression that she must be some kind of bug person, likely with long, thin wings on her back. Heh. It's cute how you feel safe enough to say something now that you're near the light. There's something really sleazy and off-putting to me about this man's tone of voice. The wings on the girl's back jitter once again with repulsion.
Okay, you know what? I think I'll be heading back to town in the morning. You can have the upstairs to yourself. I'm going to sleep on the couch.
The sectoid girl rants with as much venom as her little voice can muster as she crosses the room, trying to pass through the little bit of space left by the angle of the large man's body in the doorway. She crosses the threshold just as she says the word couch, but then her momentum is suddenly yanked back, and a piercing wail rings from her lungs before the sound of violent ripping yanks the wind out of her. What? What the fuck? I'm almost certain that the older guy just tore the young girl's wings off. You want to know why I hire you bugs up to the cabin out here? The man's voice is thunderous and chillingly casual, like he thinks the answer should have been common sense all along. All the girl can muster is to cry and wail in pain as she crawls across the ground, but he calmly strides over in his heavy boots and plants a foot in her back. It's because you little insects are so much fun to pull apart. He shouts and grips her by the wrist. No. This fucking sucks. I want to wake up now, please. The girl gasps out whatever air is left inside of her, hardly audible over the pop and tear before a thin limb is tossed across my floor and warm liquid shoots out over my surface. Stop it! Leave her alone, you monster! Another limb lands with a splatter and the girl isn't moving or making a sound anymore. She's definitely dead. Why is this happening? I try to ignore the feeling of her broken body bleeding inside of me. There's nothing I can do. I want to listen to the rain. I want to count how many raindrops I can feel at once. I can hear him breathing, hear him stomping on the body, squishing blood out of its holes, giggling as it coats me. This monster is still inside of me. I want to listen to the rain. I try to count how many raindrops I can feel at once. I wish I'd wake up. Chapter 2. The morning after having killed the sectoid girl inside of me, the murderer had taken the body outside and fed it to what sounded like a pack of wild dogs. He mopped up all of the blood and then squeezed a bag of oranges into a bucket of water and gave the whole place a once-over that could mask even the most deathly of smells. He left in the afternoon. Having no idea of my distance from the nearest town or how often that maniac was bringing girls to the slaughter here, all I could do was dread my fate of bearing witness to another grisly murder in just a few days' time. There has to be something I can do, right? Was I reborn here just to suffer? I try to get a sense of my body, but I can't exactly feel anything. It's hard to get a concrete sense of myself besides the layer of concrete forming my base. I can feel the wind shaking my shutters and chestnuts pelting my roof after falling from trees, and even I felt the heat from the stove warming my kitchen wall when the murderer was cooking eggs in the morning, but it's hard for me to even know which furniture ornaments my interior until it's been interacted with. Maybe someone else will show up, hopefully someone really strong. It had seemed like that man had killed other girls in this cabin before, but also like he probably hadn't done it a whole bunch of times if he still felt excited about explaining his reasoning before doing it. As sick as it made me feel, I'd given a lot of thought to the memory of that night over the next couple of days that I sat alone in the woods and started comparing the criminals' behavior against stories I'd heard of similar madmen on true crime podcasts back at home.
A guy like this definitely wasn't going to kill himself, and he clearly didn't feel any remorse over killing what he looked at as inferior beings. The only thing that could put a stop to him would be getting sloppy and cornering himself with someone capable of killing or capturing him. I had low expectations of law enforcement in a mid-fantasy setting like I seemed to be trapped in, but I also figured that a hit would be put out to other adventurers to hunt down whoever is responsible for the disappearance of Jitterfolk contractors in the woods outside this dungeon. But how long is that going to take? The thought of having to witness all of this bloodshed for however long it takes for him to be stopped makes my soul churn. Nevertheless, the sun sets at night and rises in the morning, and I have no greater conception of my circumstances than I did before. I feel completely stuck. If I had something that could perk up, it would have done so at the sound of sudden coughing in the distance from someone coming up the hill towards me. Can you really not hit that without coughing? A woman's voice is barely audible in approach. I like to cough, another rougher woman's voice responds. That's disgusting, the first one says. You're disgusting, the other retorts. It seems like there's just the two of them. I start to hear the creaking of heavy armor and two patterns of footsteps crunching the sparse summer leaves amid the verdant grass of what might be considered my lawn. Did you see the cabin? Did you see the cabin? The first girl asks sarcastically. Oh, you mean the one directly in front of us? I happened to notice it. And I have, in fact, been walking directly at it for the last 5 seconds, the other girl snips back. I can't figure out what the hell is up with these two. Great job, genius, the more effeminate-sounding woman says flatly. Go check the door. I'll check you, bitch, the surly woman retorts. I hear a slap ring out loudly and a tiny ouch from the surly one. Check the fucking door and don't talk back to me, you little half-breed freak. A much fuller and more threatening voice explodes out of the woman who'd seemed more feminine before. She now comes off like a drill sergeant hazing a new army recruit. Yes, good holy warrior, the surlier woman bitterly grumbles before coughing and shuffling over to check the handle on my front door. I'm pretty sure that I was left unlocked and untrapped. The woman is careful to examine my exterior from multiple angles before trying my knob, and then very tepidly turns the handle and opens the door, peeking through the crack as she lets go and lets me slowly swing open. All clear, she announces and starts to step inside, but gets yanked back by what I can tell is a substantially larger woman when her weight crosses onto my threshold. I didn't say go in, maggot. Follow after me. She lets go of the smaller woman and strides into the room noisily, heavy armor creaking, and my floorboards doing the same under the strain of carrying her. She immediately begins undoing the straps on her armor and then letting each piece of it drop to the floor carelessly, those heavy impacts cracking and weakening my floorboards from the inside as they're smashed between the armor and the concrete below. I don't feel any pain, but can sense that my foundation has been impacted. Smells like someone died in here recently. I like it. The woman of impressive strength announces into the air. I'm picking up citrus, the smaller woman responds. Classic cleanup job. The larger woman flops down on what must be the couch the sectoid girl had mentioned wanting to sleep on the night before and continues. Sloppy as shit, though. Guy's probably killed 3, 4. Certainly not a soldier. What are you up to? The older woman has a hint of accusation in her tone. Give me a good reason and I'll make you number 66. The younger woman responds. Holy shit. Even though I've met people who've served in the military and supposedly may have killed someone, I never even considered running into what might be described as a war hero. The flippant way she dismissed the low-level violence of the killer I'd been fearing for days simultaneously re-scoped my sense of dread and also filled me with a kind of hope that this person is indeed a lot stronger than the other murderer, but also a fear that she has the potential to be even more terrifying. Get me something to eat, she bellows, getting comfortable in her seat. How about you eat a fucking dick? The rough woman cuts back. I can hear the couch creak as the big woman shoots up to a seated position, and then the rapid rush of something whipping through the air, then cracking harshly, forcing a harried cry to retch from the older woman's lungs. Another attack follows immediately, the flowing rope ripping into the air in a vorpal frenzy as it cracks again and again against the older woman's flesh, and she hacks and coughs, crumbling to the ground in a ball of pain and winded exasperation. I quickly lose count of the lashes, unable to handle imagining what the woman must be feeling that her empty lungs can't even express. Get me something to eat, shitheel, the large woman spits after she's satisfied that her slave has been sufficiently punished. The older woman remains motionless, shaking and weeping in shock from the pain for a long while. Eventually, I feel her dragging herself across my floor in the direction of the kitchen, and the soldier begins snoring. Jesus fucking Christ, this is dark. I forgot about the second chapter. I forgot how dark it continues to be. I don't know if I have the headspace to write any more of this, actually. I would have to be in a really, really bad spot. This was definitely inspired by listening to my alcoholic uncle argue with his wife all the time and feeling like I couldn't do anything about it. And feeling like, you know, at a certain level of dissociation, you feel like you just are the house. You know? Imagine if Vending Machine Isekai was like this. Yeah, well, this is the opposite of a wish fulfillment story. Although my intention is for it to eventually have like 4 people in the cabin, and eventually like there would be, you know, there'd be like at least one somewhat likable one maybe who's like final girl. And at one point Cabin will like somebody will get pushed into a railing, and Cabin like just is like, I hope the railing breaks, and then the railing does break, and it's like that's the only time that there is a potentially an expression of will, or maybe it's just I was so broken that you couldn't even operate inside of me anymore, you know, like, but that's like the final. And then I believe it ends with them asking for the cabin to just be burned down, was my idea for the ending, and their soul would like escape. There you go. That's what's supposed to happen in that story, just in case I never enter a dark enough state of mind to write any more of that. No Chill in Limbo. This is 6 pages. I don't remember this at all. Cluedo Maxwell. Okay. No Chill in Limbo by Beatrice Derasine. Episode 1, Drunken Death. Cluedo Maxwell? A clear feminine voice cuts over the turmoil in the middle-aged man's mind, opening his eyes to the present moment with a shudder. He responds in a daze. Yeah, what? Where am I? What the hell just happened? Cluedo finds himself in a reception room. There is a computer desk about 6 feet in front of him, at which sits the woman who called his name. Behind her on the left is a hallway leading further into this plainly decorated, modern-looking facility. Cluedo doesn't realize that there is no entrance behind him. Your life ended at 10:45 p.m. March 11th, 2022. It's 10:46 now. God has not decided that your soul is noble enough for heaven and has sent you to the limbo facility for now. If you just head down the hallway on your left, you'll find open doorways to each of our amenities, starting with the bar on the left-hand side. Take your time and let me know if you have any questions going forward. Cluedo doesn't break his gormless stare as the girl finishes her explanation. He simply turns his gaze toward the hall, spotting the hole in the wall on the left, and then faintly attempts an appreciative gesture by instinct as he makes an immediate beeline for the bar. Upon crossing the threshold, a vaguely familiar environment greets him. TVs hang just under the ceiling and all along the walls, and chaotic sound intrudes upon his ears from the sources of multiple TVs, a sound system somewhere tuned to classic radio, and an indistinct blanket of conversations from warm voices all throughout what reveals itself to be a spacious, multi-layered bar and lounge. In the center of the huge main room stands a 360-degree bar 20-odd meters in length, with more tap switches running down from the ceiling than Cluedo has ever seen in one place. Sprawling out from it are tables and booths, staircases down into pits full of couches, others up to balconies with their own bars surrounding arrays of tables, and hallways leading off to other more secluded bars with different lighting and musical vibes. Cluedo can barely process everything in front of him as he emerges fully from the antechamber onto the floor of the main room and realizes the sheer number of TV screens peppered all over the walls and the number of branching paths to other parts of the restaurant, while also trying to grasp at exactly what he'd been doing before he wound up here and whether any of this makes any kind of logical sense. Before he gets too dizzy from the thought, lights and sounds, he notices someone trying to make eye contact and gesturing at him from the bar. As his eyes adjust, he recognizes that the man is tilting a loaded shot glass in his direction and trying to reel him in with his eye movement, so Cluedo follows the path of least resistance over to the free shot. As Cluedo comes closer, he becomes less sure that the person gesturing to him is a man. They give off an androgynous impression, as much like a dignified woman as like a well-dressed but strangely effeminate man from 35 to 50 years in age. Without saying anything, but with a light nod of the head, which the stranger reciprocates, Cluedo takes a shot from their hand. He wafts it at a distance to identify that it is indeed rum, and he knocks it back quickly. It signals to the bartender, who's just becoming attentive to his arrival, for a double shot of the same while he reels from the taste. The bartender immediately places another larger shot glass down, fills it, and stands by as Cluedo chucks it down. Through the bite of an agonized expression, he asks the bartender to give him the next one and a glass of Coke, and then finally sits at the bar. I don't blame you at all, states the person who provided Cluedo with the first shot as they watch him get comfortable. Yeah, so not to be blunt or new or nothing, but do you know what the hell's going on here? Cluedo tries his damnedest to seem cool, like he's just a new guy in town and not absolutely reeling with dissociative discomfort toward his situation. This is Sorry Bub, the pub in Purgatory. The person gestures at a pink and blue neon sign above the bar, which repeats the name as stated. Mostly it's a place to drink and be sad and think about how you died for a while until you're ready to pass on. You can also watch all these TVs which show you the last hours of other people's lives, starting from the fatal decision which begins the countdown to their death, although it's not often a decision which they made on purpose. Incidentally, that's exactly what led me to wave you down. As awkward as it is to admit now that you're here, I actually saw the end of your life sitting right here at this bar no more than 5 minutes ago. Is that right? Cluedo roughly asks in response, seeming to mean it in multiple ways. Well, maybe you've got a better sense of it than I do then, because I haven't drank myself back to figuring out what the hell I did to get me here yet. He caps off his statement by downing the rest of his cap in Coke and then searching for the bartender with his eyes. How do you think you died? The person asks, looking at the empty glass as if in response to its state with a hardly disguised undercurrent of accusation. All right, wise ass. It's pretty invasive that you spied in on the ending of my life. And when I'm sitting here supposedly dead, you got no idea how I got here. You want to attack the way I live my life? Who the hell are you anyways? Cluedo's voice had raised to a volume that would easily draw attention in a less chaotic sound environment, and for the first time he stares directly into his accuser's eyes as he lays in, noticing a hint of unveiled surprise and laying in on his abrasive tone even harder. The person blinks once in hesitation and then sighs, smiles, and raises their hands in exasperation. Fair enough, you're right that it's fucked up for me to pry into a stranger's situation without even giving them some ammunition to fire back. Hey, Fred! The person suddenly whips their head around to face the long side of the bar and scream for the bartender at a throat-shredding volume which cuts over all of the sounds in the bar. Fred looks up with a quick nod and hand gesture, holding a towel in hand as he begins in their direction, collecting glassware and preparing drinks on his way down as the person continues. My name is Micah. They offer their hand. Any pronouns suffice. Cluedo reluctantly shakes it and responds with his own name as the bartender slips him another cap and Coke and supplies a purple drink to Micah before they continue. I was the co-director for the U.S. branch of the Iwatobi Group, Micah explains. No shit. Cluedo can't hide his sudden interest at recognizing the name of the fastest-growing global super conglomerate. Shouldn't you have a private bathroom or something? Private room or something? I'm sure I will when I make it to hell, Micah smiles, sipping their drink. I'm guessing you got yourself wrapped up on that whole factory explosion last week, Cluedo surmises, taking another sip as well before continuing. Saw about it on the news. Wrapped up? That's a fair way to put it, since I died in that explosion, Micah says. I thought I recognized you. The one higher-up that died and caught a lot of flack for the whole thing. They got you conducting a 3-ring circus on TV these days, Cluedo explains. Yeah, well, that's why I was there trying to stop it. I've got no regrets about how I handled my situation. Micah takes a deeper sip of their drink. Me neither, Cluedo agrees, and mimics Micah's drinking voice once again. I think this cat is trying to get out. This is basically Death Billiards meets Has Been Hotel, I guess. Really? How can you say that? Micah asks, suddenly accusatory once more. Do you even remember what brought you here? They follow up, softening the tension just slightly. I do. I was riding down the road, I'll admit, a little drunk, because my girl was missing for a week. And I'd been tearing the city apart looking for the motherfucker I'd tracked down as the guy who took her. That's when I spotted him in the driver's seat of a car. And he was the only one there, about to cross the intersection from the right. The second he started up, I put the pedal all the way down and I smashed my goddamn truck right through the side of his BMW. And I know I saw that fucker's head spin before it all went black too. So I don't give a damn thing to regret about that, because I know that motherfucker is in hell. Cluedo finishes his drink to conclude his rant and then finishes Micah's too. Micah's face falls into contemplative sullenness as he watches Cluedo's rant, and peering into his empty glass afterward, he only asks, "So that's all you knew about it? Are you going to make me ask you what you mean by that?" Cluedo asks in a sort of commanding bark, now red-faced drunk. "Not today," Micah replies, kind of under his breath. "Actually, how about I have Fred bring some beers over to the couch and we watch one of these TVs? I want to see how you feel about watching someone else's story from the outside, since I watched yours." "Huh. You want me to be guilty like you? I don't get my kicks out of watching people's misery." Cluedo is being contrarian just to mess with Micah at this point. "Well, if they show up here afterwards, you'll get your own shot to talk to them afterwards." "Buddy, I'm not like you. My life isn't about passing judgment on people's decisions and trying to help them with business that isn't mine, okay? Bad enough I'm stuck here dead, and I don't even know what happened to my daughter. Can't watch my wife grieve my death." "And I suppose I'm never going to see her again. I can't even see my first son or my parents because I'm stuck in limbo. And now I'm in this loud-ass bar, can't parse any sound to save my life. And I got you over here negging me, getting me all flustered, then flirting with me like I'm going to sit here and drown my sorrows in someone else's pain. No thank you, pal. Pass." Micah gives pause for a moment, waiting for the bartender to come back over and refill his drink and taking a sip before he responds. "Look, you can stay here and brood about your loss and drown yourself in liquor like those guys sitting in the dark that haven't left in weeks. Your body doesn't actually need sleep or food anymore, but you can get as drunk as you like. The TVs will become audible to you as soon as you concentrate on one, but the point of paying attention is that the world is still moving out there. All of these people are dying very soon, it's true, but you can still see the fleeting beauty of their lives in their stories as I did in yours. I didn't talk to you because I thought you were miserable. I wanted to understand you because I know that you're brave. But more importantly, I like to talk to people who can challenge my perspective. I don't need us to be friends, and I'm definitely not trying to flirt with you. I'm just looking for someone I can talk to about the people on these screens so I don't lose my mind sitting around all these sad sacks." Cluedo is uncommonly calm and considerate as he hears Micah's plea. He drearily blinks through his drunkenness, trying to have a reasonable response to what had registered to him as a resonant standpoint. Glancing around the lounge, he spots a comfortable-looking couch near a corner full of TV screens that seems to be calling his name all of a sudden. "Will they keep bringing beer?" he asks, not breaking his iron gaze on the couch. "There's a button on the table you can press, and they'll bring out a pitcher of whatever you've got." "I need an IPA," Cluedo says, and then stands up immediately and makes a beeline for the spot he wants, flopping down and heaving all the air from his body as he finds the couch every bit as comfortable as he'd hoped. The drunken warmth of comfort sends an endorphin rush over his body that just about forces a laugh, but he swallows it down and starts scanning over the many nearby screens for something to focus on. Amazed with Cluedo's straightforwardness, Micah finishes his purple drink and awaits the pouring of an IPA pitcher before he joins Cluedo on the couch. "I should have known they'd be mostly old folks," Cluedo surmises as Micah sets the pitcher on the table nearby and gets comfortable beside Cluedo, sort of looking over his shoulder as Cluedo sits on the edge of his couch. Facing screens on his left. "You can use the switches on the side of the couch to change the channels on each screen if you don't like the ones next to you," Micah responds. "Go lower in number to see younger victims." "Makes me feel creepy when you call him that. I'll find a soldier dyer to watch," Cluedo says. He finds the channel button for the nearest TV on the side of his chair and then flips down till channel 45. "Aren't you 46? Micah asks slyly. "This ain't about me," Cluedo snaps. "I just think it's most appropriate to see my peers." As he gets comfortable again, he grumbles something like, "I was born in 76. That's how I remember it. Not my fault that the year keeps changing." And Micah just smirks and turns their attention to the screen. The number 45 in the upper left corner of the screen and the chyron at the bottom announcing the show's title as Sean Pablo Cortez's Final Hour over a 60% yellow progress bar fade away a few moments after landing on the channel. "This guy's only got 20 minutes left and he's just making a sandwich," Cluedo remarks. Indeed, whatever supposed camera was capturing this footage is pointed over Sean Pablo's shoulder, watching him hastily prepare a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He doesn't know he's about to die. I wonder what he did 40 minutes ago that's about to get him killed, though. Micah joins in on analyzing the show out loud. It's about 11 p.m., right? Looks like he's on the night shift lunch break and doesn't think he's getting back on time. Bet my wife is doing the same right now," Cluedo speculates, drinking his beer. You city folk are always in a rush, Micah counters. But look at all that kitchen he's got. I guess this guy was supposed to be a city folk, and I've been giving him a country accent. But look at all that kitchen he's got for a guy that doesn't cook. Probably lives in the Midwest somewhere. Oh, maybe he's not city folk. Ain't no city folk in Richmond, just poor folk and yuppie country folk. I ain't had no small kitchen because I was so busy, all right? It's poor families that can't protect themselves like mine that fall victim to crimes like this. My daughter is too beautiful to be walking the streets. Cluto's drunkenness has been catching up with him since getting comfortable, and his mind starts wandering back into his own state of affairs. Cluto, focus. He's getting into his car. Micah tries to draw Cluto back onto the scene before them. Betty crashes it just like me, Cluto exclaims, over-gesturing with his arms in a way that someone does when starting to lose control of their body to the alcohol. Look, he's still eating the Sammy. Seen from what would seem like a camera down at the bottom of the windshield, Sean Pablo, and there you go. That's it. It's over. I have to pee. I gotta grab something from the car, so I'm gonna be back in a couple minutes. Go watch a cool YouTube video. Damn, I look good from this angle. Anyway.
wouldn't even try it on. No, I did send it back, remember? Yeah, they were like $400. This bed's not wet and this chair's not wet. Was there poop on the chair? There's a couple pairs of pants in the bathroom.
Thank you, Jitter J, who said, I don't know if you knew this, but you might be a good writer. That's kind of how I'm feeling reading these, honestly. I'm like surprised how good some of these are that I don't remember. Like, they're fan. Also, I'm here again. I think I'm just going to do one or two more. Shut down stream for like an hour and come back and do Umineko. But I'll probably do a longer Umineko than usual. Because I'm going out of town. And I don't know how much streaming I'll get done next week. But for now, more of this. I like No Chill in Limbo. I suspect that there is somewhere a design document for No Chill in Limbo, like a short design document. I don't know if it's like a note or it would probably be on my other computer, actually, my desktop that is in Kentucky. But I'm sure that I planned that as like a 4-chapter story. Like there was supposed to be like 4 episodes because it was supposed to be like an OVA type vibe. But I don't remember what was supposed to happen in it. All right, here's an idea. Undead mascot Bowgirl. Chapter 1, the failed mascot character that simply refuses to die. Is she famous? Is she forgotten? It's always been hard to tell with the subject of Old School Gaming Icons episode 46, Bowgirl, the failed mascot character that simply refuses to die. If you can't tell, this is me doing a fictional, like I think I'm making like an analysis video of a fictional game. Is what this is. Like most of the characters we talk about on this show, Bowgirl made her debut during the mid-1980s gaming boom spurred by the massive success of the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, whereas Nintendo has kept even characters that it refuses to make games for popular to the Super Smash Bros. Fighting game series, Bowgirl was exclusive to the Atari 7800, which underperformed in comparison to gaming consoles for Nintendo and Sega when it was released to compete with, in 1986. Whereas Super Mario quickly became a household name in the US and Japan, Atari and Sega struggled to push their own competing mascot characters to represent their consoles. Sega started out with the Alex Kidd character, whom we talked about in the first episode of this series way back in 2018 when I still had all my hair. Alex Kidd in Miracle World came bundled with the Sega Master System and starred in 6 games just within the second half of the 80s, only to be completely abandoned when Sega created the much more successful Sonic the Hedgehog character to push the Genesis console in 1991. The Atari 7800 came packaged with popular arcade-based racing game Pole Position 2 and mostly housed home console versions of Atari arcade games, many of which had already been given previous releases on other consoles. By the end of 1986, the console was already dramatically underperforming to Atari's expectations, and so they started rushing to concoct their own mascot character to launch with the game by the second quarter of 1987, and that's exactly when we got Bowgirl. You can imagine how rushed the programming and marketing of this game had to be to get out fast enough to make a Hail Mary for the console. But even by the time the game was finished, Atari was already losing the will to keep pushing the console and ended up under-marketing the game anyways. Unless you were really keeping up with the news about the 7800, you were likely to dismiss the existence of Bowgirl completely, and that's exactly like most people did. This is like way too real sounding, actually. Like, everything I said there was true except for the existence of Bowgirl and Atari rushing to make this character. I'm pretty sure it's fake. I like that. I wish, actually, this is one that would be really fun to continue. I'm sure this was me trying to do like a House of Leaves Zampano. This is unrealistic. No video game company would have a female character as their mascot. Well, that's why it failed. They were trying to be different. I mean, Gianna Sisters was the Commodore 60. Like, this is also partly based on Commodore did this. They like made a Mario clone, Gianna Sisters, that like got them sued because it was too similar to Mario. But now it's like a sort of undead mascot character. This is also probably inspired by Shantae. We're going to skip Waypoint Witch for today. We'll get back to this when I do this again, inevitably. We'll also skip White Widow. We'll do Whale Eater. This is supposed to be the spiritual sequel to Baby Stabber, but it's meant to be another 6-chapter short horror story that I wanted to be like 11 minutes long. Because I was really in this headspace that 11 minutes is like exactly the perfect length for a project, like 11 to 13 minutes. Anyway, Whale Eater. The whales were inventing new sounds to communicate the depths of their fear. Never so commonly had the carcasses of their kin been crushed all across the ocean's currents. Whale bodies popped like blubber-loaded water balloons in the jaws of some unfathomably massive creature all across the eastern Atlantic Ocean. Afraid that a lonely swim could lead to an unpredictable goring from some ungodly undersea nightmare, the whales became more communal than ever before, grouping into a school, eventually hundreds strong, and moving in fleets that disrupted ecosystems from the hydraulic pulsations generated by their collective mass in passing. Stronger in numbers than any of history's mightiest navies, the churning mass of gigantic underwater beasts was looking like little more than a smorgasbord to the inconceivably huge creature spreading its face deep below. The deeper swimming whales couldn't tell when they had passed into the monster's mouth. Its ends were far too distant. The ocean only suddenly seemed to be getting darker as the miles-wide throat of the thing enveloped them from below. The whales toward the outer edges of the mass felt the ocean start to shift and began collapsing inward against one another as the riptide folded in on them. Dozens of whale bodies crashing against each other, thrashing in desperation and breaking themselves against one another like a mosh pit in a venue whose walls are closing in. As the mouth compressed, the whales became tightly bunched into a big ball like a school of smaller fish would be in a catcher's net. And then the whole hull was swallowed without ceremony as the mouth, like a rising continent, surfaced slowly, all the way until its lips cracked the sky and slammed shut. Anything not whole within the throat, instead crushed between the uncountable ship-sized rock-like teeth, was pulverized into a bloody mist, blasting out and blanketing miles of ocean. When Italian swimmers came running en masse to shore from a tide suddenly thick with whale blood, the nations of man came to attention. Chapter 2, Boat Thrower. Attempting to rationalize the reality of a country-sized creature eating all of the ocean's life and then being tasked to do something about it wasn't possible for many of Earth's decision-makers. Unable to catch his breath as he watched the lumbering movement of the monster on his ship's radar, the head of the British Navy decided, rather than considering the possibilities, to take his pistol and paint his brains across the captain's chair. America's aged president couldn't comprehend the issue and encouraged Americans to simply ignore the problem until Europe dealt with it. As disastrous data revealed the creature's trajectory toward the shores of France, the French and Allied fleets went out in even greater numbers and with much greater weapons than the whales before them to see what they could do to stop the apocalyptic approach. Starting with warning shots was the waste of time you'd expect. When the beast didn't alter course, the volleys began. As many missiles and torpedoes as the sky and sea had space for, rocking the depths with enough force to cause tidal waves and quakes down the country's evacuated coast. Over the course of 20 minutes, enough munitions were exploded to annihilate an island nation, but this awesome display of force hardly slowed the monster's motion. Covering a state's distance every step, the monster was much faster than the soon fleeing ships, and relatively quickly raised one of its appendages from under a fleet of them, lifting them all upon its uncompromising mass, and then hurling the bunch of boats high into the sky. Hundreds of miles away, Paris would be pummeled by a hail of heavy warships, crashing through monuments, buildings, and city streets alike, crumbling blocks into the subway tunnels, and leveling anything recognizable about the place. A few more tantric tosses, and the beast had already cleared all of the obstacles and displaced much of the water from the space separating it and land, crashing who knows how many ships through city blocks and country plots across Europe. I guess, and then the next chapters were going to be Island Digester, Continent Tanker, Earth Hurler, and Space Eater. So I guess this creature is going to pull a Murder of the Universe from King Gizzard and get so big it eats everything. Is the idea here? I think that's Whale Eater. Let's see. I want to read that one. That might be the last one I do. I don't remember Emotional Gaming. This is apparently about The Last of Us being as good of a game as Skyfall is of a movie. I don't know. That doesn't sound that interesting. Endless Elden Ring analysis. This is 23 pages long. I don't know if this is the same thing as the... I think this might be different from the... Yeah, I think this is a different video from the ones that I actually did publish. I think I restarted trying to do Elden Ring analysis, wrote 23 pages, and then didn't get very, not even very far into the game. I will tackle that another time. Also, this is Metroid, similar thing with Metroid. Where I was going to try to make like the ultimate super in-depth review of the original game, like analysis, like room by room type shit. Gave up on that after 22 pages. And then we've got Shantae, which has 52 pages. Obviously, this is much, much too long for me to read here today. So yeah, we'll finish this off with a light novel attempt that I think you guys will actually really like, and be sad that I don't have more of. But I could see writing more of this, because this one's like, this is my attempt to write something like truly mindless, like don't give it any thought, just start writing and see what happens, and I think it's fairly entertaining. I couldn't 1cc life on the first try, so I'll keep starting over and practicing until I do. If you don't know what 1cc means, one continue completion. Anyway. This game is so fucking hard! Carnella grits her teeth and grips the controller furiously, palms sweaty and fingers beginning to ache as she furiously mashes through the menus to start her playthrough again. Her speakers are turned to full blast and resplendent chiptune melodies cascade through the atmosphere under a blanket of bullet noises. She has been trying to get past the fourth boss in the game she's playing for the last 6 hours. Can't you turn that shit down? A barely audible voice hollers from the other side of the wall to the left of her computer screen, where her sister has just come back from class. No, fuck off, Cornella shouts back. I had to listen to you singing Taylor Swift last night. At least that's actual music. Go choke on your boyfriend's dick and shut the fuck up while you're at it, if possible. Carnella's attention is taken from this conversation as she passes the easy beginning of the first level and becomes completely engrossed in the dodging of endless bullets. You're disgusting. Her sister seems to holler back, but she only registers a garbled mumble and the door slamming as positive signs that her disruptor has gone off to do exactly as she commanded. Within seconds, she is so deeply focused on the game once more that she's completely forgotten the prior interaction. Her pulse quickens and her eyes widen as she enters a total physical and mental flow state, dissolving away all but the tension in her hands and heart. Level after level, she narrowly brushes with death, time oscillating as each moment is drawn out before her like the time it takes a JoJo character to ponder the attack of a stand. Finally, the tension cracks with the explosion sound the boss makes upon death, and Carnella loosens her wrists just for a moment, exhaling deeply. Okay, this is the fucking level. She quietly rasps under her breath through cracked lips, which she hasn't remembered to take a drink in hours. Her adrenaline jolts right back up to full force as soon as enemies and bullets begin to fill the screen, and her pupils dilate to take it all in. Her head is completely clear of thought, her fingers operating concisely on pure instinct, the outer frames of her eyes slightly wincing each time a bullet gets too close for comfort. By the time she reaches the boss, she is hardly aware that there is any other existence beyond it. She dodges the first couple of bullet sprays perfectly and feels an excitement leap up through her body, but she quells it immediately, terrified of allowing a distracting thought to occur. Luckily, there is enough going on to keep her concentrated, and she isn't upset about the near-perfect dodge on the next attacks, as she is only concerned with survival at this point, and not with trying to hit a new high score, being already confident she has achieved one with her perfect run so far. Recovering her finesse, she has little trouble pressing through the boss's first life meter and onto its second form, a transitory moment which weighs upon her heart like a lead brick, as she has never made it through this part without losing a stock. It's always the fifth attack that gets her. This much she had figured out, and she knew how to dodge it, but it required a level of precision which even remembering that it was coming would be too distracting to achieve. She has to immediately forget ever having lost at this part to overcome it, and have faith that her finger muscles have retained the memory of doing it right and not the memory of all the times she fucked up at this part. With great focus, she passes the fourth attack, but doesn't celebrate. She has resolved before starting the run that she wouldn't allow herself to feel anything at all until this battle is complete. To her own astonishment, she clears the second phase with all of her stock intact for the very first time. Luckily, she knows has more confidence about the third phase, having played it to near perfection on the previous attempt. Her excitement over the new accomplishment and subsequent subtle aggravation with herself over allowing that emotion to appear strongly enough to keep her from a perfect dodge on the first attack causes her to play this phase a little uneven, but as expected, she arrives at the fourth phase with stock intact and levels herself back up with a sharp inhale as she gears up for the phase on which she typically loses her run. Phase 4 is a brutal onslaught of erratic bullets, less patterned than any other spray in the game and truly pushing her instincts and reaction time to the limits with its quick bursts of action. She tries not to flinch when the fifth attack takes her first stock. Just as long as she can at least push through this phase, she'll at least have gotten to see whatever comes next and start preparing for that. All she has to do is survive 4 more sprays and she's on to the next challenge. Her next 3 dodges are perfect, her fourth only slightly off center, and the fifth shot takes her by a pixel when she taps just a bit too far to the right. Fuck! Carnella screams and slams her controller to the ground in fury. Then, before she can tell what's happening, she feels a sharp pain suddenly intruding on her esophagus. Ugh. She suddenly finds herself choking and trying to cough up a tiny piece of plastic that broke off of the controller, rocketed straight up and lodged itself in her windpipe. Grasping at her neck desperately and stumbling about her bedroom, she heads for the door, banging on the walls loudly along the way in hopes that someone is still at home to hear it. But no one is. She clutches the door handle, already becoming lightheaded and feeling the need to lean on it as she opens the door and fights her way into the hall. Her eyes are blear with tears as she makes her way to the bathroom, but she doubles over along the way, both hands uselessly around her neck as she keeps trying to push air through her clogged pipe to her rapidly depleting lungs. But the energy is leaving her body too quickly. Her face starts to go purple and pained tears stream down her face as she collapses to her side and rapidly dies. I can't believe I'm going to die before making it past that fucking boss, is the last thought that crosses Carnella Rossio's mind before her vision. Carnella Ross. For a moment, her consciousness seems to completely fade until it is no more. But then something begins to fade into view. It is a panel of colored text which she recognizes all too well, an evenly spaced list of 4 numbered options below a heading that reads, Continue? The options include retry, return to title, and most ominously, game over. I have to retry. I have to come back and kick that fucker's ass, she thinks. And before she knows it, she suddenly is back on her feet, by which sits a tiny wet piece of plastic. What the fuck was that? Have I played this game so long I'm hallucinating shit? Also, goddamn, I gotta piss. Carnella enters the bathroom, fills a cup with water from the sink, and drinks it. and then sits on the toilet a couple moments longer than usual, really pondering whether any of that had just happened, or if maybe that's the kind of vision one has during a near-death experience. She still can't remember actually hacking up the plastic piece and returning to her feet, but perhaps the lack of oxygen to her brain was making her hallucinate. She certainly feels that if her life was starting to flash before her eyes, then it only makes sense that she'd have seen that game over screen before anything else. As if I'd ever let a game over screen get me down. I'll show that stupid screen who's boss. With regained determination, Carnella wipes herself and shoots up from the toilet, eager to return to her room, which is still emanating loud chiptune music, and give it another run. However, she forgets to pull her pants back up before attempting a massive stride and ends up tripping very quickly, bashing her head on the edge of the the edge of the bathroom sink, and dying instantly. Why the fuck would I write kitchen sink? Once more, she finds herself faced with a game over screen. Well, shit, I really went and broke the cardinal sin of arcade gaming, didn't I? Of course you won't get better results from hitting retry, only a much shorter session for the same cost, with no time to I don't know what word I meant to write here. Renunerate? To renunerate your mistakes and better your play, nor to get the additional practice at the game's base motor functions by playing through the levels again. I thought I knew all of this. When would I ever be satisfied with anything but a single continue completion? With a mixed feeling of defeat and determination, her soul chooses to return to title. Carnella's life. Please insert coins. Shit, how much is it to play my life again? Carnella checks the pockets on her shorts and finds a pair of quarters. Producing them, a small res light appears before her eyes, illuminating a coin slot, into which she deposits the 50 cents. You can tell I did not read this back after writing it. I think I wrote this on my phone, actually. Ruminate. Yes, that must be what I meant. Ruminate. Carnella checks the pockets on her shorts and finds a pair of quarters. Okay, I read that. Illuminating a coin slot into which she deposits the 50 cents, and then the light fades away, leaving her in total darkness. Okay, what now? Also, is it getting warm in here or what? Carnella feels her consciousness slip back into the warm feeling surrounding her, and sleep takes hold. When she wakes up, she notices a sliver of light in the distance. What's that light? She ponders. That's a Garcy Swing reference. What's that light? She ponders and starts trying to move toward it. As she does so, she feels the space around her seem to contract, and as though caught in an ocean slipstream, she is propelled forward toward the light. Is this thing going to take me to heaven or what? She wonders as the light gets bigger and closer, starting to resemble something she could pass through. Once she's up against it, she realizes the ovular light is a little smaller than her head and undulating slightly. Unable to reach a hand up to pass into it, the pressing current pushes her head straight into the light and begins to stretch it around her, shoving her through with some difficulty. For a moment, Carnella can't see or hear anything. It's all too bright and loud, and she feels her body being rapidly scooped up in some giant pair of arms and rapidly whisked away around some unknown environment. In confusion and sensory overload, she calls out once and finds her voice to sound like a sharp cry, and that's when it all clicks. Wait a minute, am I a fucking baby? Sure enough, as she would come to understand, as she was taken home in a carrier by her mother, Carnella had begun her life again from the beginning, but with all of the memories of her past life intact. Her vocal cords and motor functions weren't developed enough to do much or communicate about it, though, and she found herself crying often as a result of failing to do any of the things she knew she ought to be able to. She has a foul temper, but I really think she's incredibly smart, her mother shares with her own mother, who's over to visit and help out. It always seems like she can tell what I'm doing and wants to copy me and then gets furious when she can't. I never knew a baby could be so ambitious. Oh, honey, you were a pretty ambitious baby yourself, you know. I remember you learned how to take off your own diaper after you poop and you'd come find me to wipe you off. You, Mom, thanks. By the time Carnella knew she was capable of speaking, she realized she needed to be very tactical about her approach to life. It was fine if she seemed a little advanced for her age, but she couldn't just start asking her mom to buy her adult video games or start using the internet to post on message boards as a 2-year-old. Moreover, she'd been reminded of just how different culture had been 17 years before her death. Not only had Apple yet to create the first smartphone, but her favorite game, Insufferable Sanctioned Archetype, Insufferable Sanctioned Archetype wouldn't be released for another 5 years. Her mother didn't even own a home PC yet, just a really crummy laptop that she used for her writing job. Nevertheless, after the hell of being trapped inside her mind for the first year and some change, she needed a way to entertain herself. Luckily, her mother was interested in fast-tracking her very intelligent child's education and provided her with enough children's learning material that she could just pretend to be learning everything really fast. By the time she was 2, she was walking and talking enough to ask her mom for things she wanted, eventually netting her a children's almanac and a collection of Pokemon picture books to read. They were hardly compelling literature to her adult mind, but having only gotten into the franchise when she was older the first time, she was intrigued to find out what she had missed out on, and had found herself analyzing the structure and presentation of the stories to understand how someone goes about simplifying a story to a level that it appeals to children. I was never able to tell a story this concisely, she thought. In her past life, she had taken interest in becoming a light novel author at the back end of middle school and given up on it by the second year of high school when she couldn't get anyone to sit through her stories and got reamed by the comments when she posted them online. Her mind had always been so aflurry with ideas. I don't think this is a word. So a flurry with ideas that her stories got bloated and overcomplicated, and when she lost confidence in her ability to write, that storm of thoughts turned against her into a constant self-analysis of her mistakes as a human being. Living with that mentality was so painful that she had sought any kind of outlet to silence her thoughts and channel that negativity into something at which she could improve herself. That was what had led her to vertical shooting games and to a lifestyle of endlessly replaying the same game for nearly a year as she tried to conquer its highest mode of difficulty. Now that she was an infant again, she realized that the expectations of those around her were much lower, and any expression of intelligence or ability was treated like a big deal. She certainly didn't remember being treated like a genius her first time through life. It won't last forever, though. I'll catch up with myself eventually, she thought. Still, it filled her with hope to realize that she had so much more room to progress now. As a 17-year-old without any social skills or marketable talents, the fact that she couldn't even master one game had made her feel like she was lagging way behind in life. Playing that game over and over had taught her an important lesson, though, that as long as she could figure out the perfect way of doing something, she would always make it that much farther on the next attempt. It was a constant cycle of making it to where she was stuck, getting better and better at everything leading up to that point, and then finally pushing through when she figured out what to do. Parts that had seemed impossible on the first few tries became easy as her body memorized the rhythm of button presses needed to pass them, and soon she was so confident that she could just blast through those parts that she wasn't thinking about them at all anymore, her mind already occupied with images of the part she was trying to make it to, while her fingers took care of the parts she was actually playing through independently of her mind. I don't know how many chances I'll get at this life, but I'm confident the parts I've already done will be much easier this time. That's what she thought, but by the time she was 5 years old, she would face her first unique challenge in this new life, starting kindergarten for the second time. So this is what the advanced elementary school is like, she thinks as she steps off the bus and sees her new school for the first time. Elementary school had been the earliest thing she could remember about her old life, but this new school is completely different from the one she'd attended in her first childhood. The building was newer, and the older kids had a subtly punished air about them as they slinked about with quiet dignity, no one looking like they'd had proper sleep. Kinda seems like hell, but it shouldn't be a problem for me with the mental age of a grown adult. As she took her seat in the classroom, she carefully observed all of the other students in the room and everyone new coming in. School is a world of opportunity that I didn't even grasp in the 12 years I attended the first time. All of these smart kids from kindergarten through fifth grade, and the teachers too. Someone here must be able to communicate on my level, or at least have a PC at home that they'll let me use. The children filling her room seemed mostly quite average. However, most of them looked nervous or even terrified about this new experience, while others have already been through pre-education and very properly sit themselves at their desks. The environment that Carnella remembered of kids who know each other grouping up for conversations wasn't there yet. Must be because they bus kids from all over the city to this school. Perfect for me. It means no one else has established any friendships yet here either. But is there anyone I'd want to talk to? It feels weird to be looking for friends in a room full of 5-year-olds, even if I look like one myself. Just as the bell is about to ring to start class, the very last kid to enter the room catches Carnella's attention. It's a gloomy girl with long, unkempt black hair and glasses staring down at a device without seemingly paying attention to where she's walking, but navigating to the desk with her name tag on it without issue. Is that a Nintendo DS? Carnella wonders loudly. I love that phrasing. That thing just came out. I couldn't even get my mom to buy me an SP. I can't believe a kindergartner has a Nintendo DS in 2004. Carnella remains transfixed on the gaming console as the little girl takes her seat and continues playing with unbroken concentration. She can faintly hear the game's music and is stunned by the gall of this child to be playing video games in school with the sound on. I guess it's the first day for her, though, so she probably doesn't know the rules. After a moment, she realizes that she knows the melody of the music coming from the game. No way! She's playing Advance Wars DS? A 5-year-old girl is playing a tactics game that I couldn't make it halfway into? Just what kind of baby geniuses do they have in this place? Okay, class, the teacher finally begins, closing the classroom door. My name is Mrs. Stories, and I'm going to have to ask that you first put away any books or games or anything else you have with you and give me your full attention, okay? We are going to start our first class by introducing ourselves. Carnella may as well have slept through all the introductions leading up to the girl on whom she was still fixated, who nicely had turned notedly. This should say notedly. Who notedly had turned off the music and slipped the DS into her desk cubby without closing it or turning it off. Each time another child stood up in front of her in her row, she would quickly reach inside the desk without looking, press a couple of buttons, and return her hands to the desk. She's still playing. That little girl is playing Advance Wars DS without looking at the screen, Carnella screams internally. She only finally takes her attention away from the girl when her name is called by the teacher. Rising with a jolt and so distracted she's forgotten the broad strokes of her situation, she introduces herself like this. My name is Carnella Rossiu, and I really like vertical shooters and Pokemon. The teacher and the few other students who had turned to look at her seemed confused, but thankfully some other kid abates the tension by exclaiming, I love Pokemon! The only reaction Carnella looks for, though, is that of the DS girl, whom she catches shooting her the slightest glance from the side of her face before returning her eyes forward. Yes, I got her attention. Now I just need to learn her name. Carnella waits patiently, trying not to find herself staring as the roll call sweeps over to DS girl. I am Victoria Serenade. I don't like talking. Victoria returns to her chair immediately upon finishing her sentence, as a couple of other children snicker at the curtness of her introduction. This girl is perfect. I just know she's got to have a computer at home. If she lets me come over, she can play her DS while I download emulators and shooter games onto her computer, and we'll have a wonderful time playing alone together. After a couple hours of rudimentary introductory classwork, the teacher calls for lunchtime and encourages the students to group up and eat together if they want to. Victoria instantly retrieves her DS from inside the desk and returns her full attention to the game. She is so distracted that she doesn't notice Carnella making her way over to her desk with 2 trays of school-provided lunches in her hands and sliding them into her desk. I won't ask you to talk, Carnella opens. I wouldn't want to look up from a DS either if I had one right now. That said, these ham and cheese sandwiches look pretty delicious. This fucking girl is like Deadpool. To Carnella's surprise, Victoria actually sets her down her DS and reaches for the milk carton, her gaze wandering off somewhere nonspecific as she squeezes open the mouth hole. You speak in complete sentences. That means one of us is the smartest kid in this class. She speaks in a hushed voice. That would be you. I couldn't beat a tactics game to save my life, much less play it without looking. I'm into shmups. Too much hand-eye coordination for me. I like figuring out the systems behind a game and mastering them. Ah, I used to know someone like that. On the internet, she supplements internally. Used to know? As in before kindergarten? Oh, yeah, a kid I used to playdate with. Speaking of, do you have a computer at home? I do. Dial-up internet, though. Oof, I hear that's rough. In truth, Carnella had never experienced dial-up internet in her past life. Her family hadn't owned a home computer until 2008 and started with DSL, but she'd heard about those dark ages from older people online. You're a strange person, Victoria responds unexpectedly. Yeah, you can say that. I thought there would be more people like us at a school like this. I don't think there is anyone like me, or like you, but that's what I like about you. I'm in, Carnella thinks. Maybe so, but at least we're the same in being different. Say, what part of town do you come from? My mom and I live on the south side near Pleasant Grove. I don't know where that is. My house is in a neighborhood called Falling Leaf, but I don't know where that is. Oh shit, that's where we had that apartment in middle school. Carnella tries to keep her overly bizarre musings about her past experiences on the inside. I think it's about 10 minutes from where I live. I could probably get my mom to take me over there, if you want to hang out sometime. So you can use my computer? Or do you want to watch me play tactics games? Honestly, I'd just be happy to have a friend. Carnella wasn't lying. In the 5 years she'd been feigning ignorance and reliving childhood, she hadn't had this much of a conversation with anyone. Talking to kids her own age usually went nowhere interesting, and hiding her power level from her mother and grandmother was exhausting. Speaking almost freely with another person had been such a relief that for the past few minutes she felt like the most like herself that she had in years. If you really want to be my friend, Victoria began honestly, and then looked Carnella straight in the eyes for the first time, revealing her brilliant amber irises, then you better be ready for a serious challenge. Carnella smiles widely. Always. I think where this is going is that Carnella is actually involved in some kind of like magic Excel world game, like a real life, like VR, like secret magic society thing. And so the two of the, like, she gets her into the fold of that game. And so it's like she literally keeps dying, restarting her entire life, meeting her again, and like getting involved in this thing, trying to beat this game. That's where the story is supposed to go. But yeah, there you go. That's I couldn't 1cc life on the first try, so I'll keep practicing, starting over and practicing until I do. Oh yeah, I thought about reading this as well, but this video still deserves to be made, so I might hold on to that. Okay. I'm gonna stop this stream now and come back at, we'll say 8 o'clock. We'll do Umineko. We're starting a little later, but we're gonna go later also. I just need a break to fucking not be reading. I scrambled my brain on the reading a little bit there. That was only 2 hours, but it felt way longer. Like getting transported into all of those stories. It's weird because I can remember writing some of them too. And like, I remember kind of the headspace I was in. Most of that was written in like late 2001 or late 2021, early 2022. When I was living at my Uncle Johnny's house and I just had a lot of time to do stuff. So I was doing all kinds of shit, you know, I made a lot of videos, was trying to write a book, and like each of those I got to, you know, wherever I got to. And then I was like, I don't know if this is the one. I don't have the next idea, you know, for where the story is supposed to go. But, you know, we'll see which ones of those people are the most interested in. Some of them I could see continuing if there was like a lot of interest. But I'm curious to know which one's the favorite. Please become a writer when you grow up. All of these are good. I'm trying. Most writers actually become famous. Like hold on. Age of writers when they wrote Breakthrough. It's like, other than like literally Anne Frank, most of them were fairly old compared to people in other mediums. So you see here, Jack Kerouac, 26, Douglas Adams, 28, F. Scott Fitzgerald, 30, Charles Dickens, 32, Stephen King, 32, J.K. Rowling, 33. That's the same age I am right now. So if I, right this year, wrote a Harry Potter, I would be at the same pace that J.K. was at in her career. Stephanie Meyer, 33. Haruki Murakami, 34. I'm just reading the ones I know. There's plenty of people I don't really know in this list. Revealing my literature power level. Terry Pratchett, 36. Now, some of these people had written stuff before. Some of them literally debuted at that age. Like, had not written shit. Look at fucking Nora Roberts' ridiculously dense catalog. And it's just like, well, 42 is her most... She's 42 and she had her biggest one, but it's clear she had a lot of success already. A lot of fucking books. George Orwell was 43. So, yeah, Frank Herbert, 46. Tolkien, 46. Dostoevsky, 46. I got lots of time. C.S. Lewis was 53. Damn. Where's J.R.R. Martin? That motherfucker was old. George R.R. Martin, I mean, not J.R.R. Tolkien, George R.R. Martin. You know, you get it how it works. All right. You don't think Kusumega could be a Harry Potter, but Sunops might be. And Sunops is built out of being a Harry. Like it was, Bird said, like it has to be competitive with Harry Potter. Like that's part of the rules. Is it has to be something that could compete in the same realm as a Percy Jackson. Bird's a big Percy Jackson kid. Like he likes Artemis Fowl. He likes Harry Potter, but Percy Jackson I think was his favorite because of the fact that it uses mythology, and he's big into history and mythology. So, and I didn't incorporate too much of that into Sunop. So I might build another story that uses mythology stuff at some point. I'd probably go Nordic because that's sort of my aesthetic. But yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm definitely gonna try to write. Sunops is aimed at a little bit older. It's more of like a seinen manga than a shonen, but like right on that cusp, like that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure level of like, well, maybe this would have been a shonen in the 80s or 90s, but now it's trending a little older. I don't know. Although now we've got like Jujutsu Kaisen and shit, so that's hard to say. Maybe it's fair to say that Sunops is a shonen. Yeah, just a dark shonen action series. It's not even that dark though. I don't plan to have it be like really violent. I wouldn't call it dark. It's just more mature in the sense that the characters are slightly older. Like the main character's, I think 19. And so, you know, I'm aiming for young adults more so than like teenager. Or, you know, it's not really meant to be something you could read before middle school, you know? All right. See y'all in like an hour.